Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular show.
Welcome back to the Print on Demand cast, episode number 76. Coming at you right now, as always, I am Josiah and joined by my co-host, my co-captain, Travis Ross. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. Doing well. It's a nice snowy afternoon in Colorado. Getting another big, huge storm coming in.
Yeah.
It's batten down the hatches. This one's supposed to be big, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think I heard 5 to 10 inches accumulatively, I guess, over the next day or so. So I hate snow. So I've lived in the wrong states my entire life, given my distaste for that weather. But yeah, not a fan. I'm sick of it, and I'm ready for it to be over. But as we record, it is Tuesday. How has your week? I mean, I guess it's a day old, day and a half old. How's the week been so far?
Good. We're spinning a lot of plates kind of right now. We're onboarding a bunch of clients. We're looking at, bringing on another, like a salesperson. More on that in the future episodes. Yeah. We'll talk more about that. And then we just had our strategy sessions this last week. And so we're kind of still, we still have a little bit to go with our goals. Sure. But we did what's called a SWOT analysis. And if you've been a long time listener, you heard me talk about this a year ago, but SWOT is your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. And you put you got like sticky notes. Everybody's got sticky notes, and we write all this stuff down. We put it all on the wall. And then we basically try to kind of, categorize them into basic, okay, well, I guess we need this. And, this is what we're all saying here. You take all of that, and then you try to determine what your goals are for the next year. Like, what are the most important things? What are the things that we're seeing the most of? What are the threats that we need to avoid? All of that stuff. You try to create your goals. And then under your goals, you create strategies, and then you try to revisit those strategies like every 90 days or whatnot. So did that last Thursday and Friday. And then we're going to have another strategy session this coming Friday just to kind of finalize our goals. So, I mean, that's just like the administrative side of the business. We've got a lot of other people, there's a lot of orders coming in and just, helping customers get their stuff. And last week was weird. We had on one day I had one person come by, and if you know anything about our stores, we don't have a storefront. It's just, it's a warehouse, I mean, we have some offices but there's no display area or anything like that.
There's no retail space.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody came by, found us on Google and said, hey, can you do, I need, some shirts and some hats for my business, and just literally dropped by. And that same day I had 3 other phone calls from other people that wanted stuff. And so that's not normal for us. I mean, it's great.
Sure.
That's what we want, but it's just oh, wow, this is working, I guess. Some of it's word of mouth. Some of it's just being, on Google. But yeah, all of that is kind of happening all at the same time. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, getting that Google business claimed and kind of building that out, I think is huge, so that when people do type in t-shirt, custom t-shirts or something, they're looking for someone in the area just to show up there and, have some pictures and some content showing what work you do, the office, the building, you know what I mean? I think it's really cool. So I can see how that would definitely bring additional awareness and some again, foot traffic that is super organic, because it's not like you don't have a retail space. It's not like you're banking on people showing up and shopping there,
Totally.
So, well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that things are going well and moving along relatively at speed, I suppose, or I guess on schedule. So with that, let's go directly to everyone's favorite segment, the weekly dad joke.
Time for the weekly dad joke.
All right, Travis, as you know, Denver is a big city. It's got a lot of things to do, and it has a zoo. So I went to the zoo the other day, and
Oh, really?
yeah, they only had one dog.
What?
Yeah. It was a Shih Tzu. And that's this week's weekly dad joke. And I'm trying to, that one was sent to me. I'm multitasking here, pulling up my my Instagram feed because that was actually sent to me by a fan of ours who listens to the show. Yeah.
That's a good joke too.
Yeah, I know. It was man, I'm trying. He's messaged me and I said, hey, we'll give you credit. And I totally spaced it till literally just now. So I'm trying to figure out.
That's fine. That's fine. I'll tell people like this joke is really, really dear to Josiah's heart because he is a Shih Tzu lover. How many Shih Tzus do you and your family, like your extended family, have?
Well, now it's just I think our two. At one point, no, there's a third. My sister has a Shih Tzu.
You can't even keep track.
At one point, my sister who lives in Alabama had 3 Shih Tzus, and we have 2 Shih Tzus, and my parents had a Shih Tzu, and my sister had a Shih Tzu. So it was very much a Shih Tzu family, and that's exactly why this gentleman messaged me. His name is Joaquin. His handle is at Joaquin Advertisement LLC on Instagram.
Thanks, Joaquin.
Yes, thank you, Joaquin. He literally said, "Hey, I'm partway through episode 74, and you're talking about the combo niches and Shih Tzus. Did you hear about that zoo that only has one dog on display? Turns out it's a Shih Tzu." Which is and so I sent him a couple messages and said, "Hey man, we'll shout you out and say thank you." So again, Joaquin, thank you for that fantastic dad joke. So a lot to get to on this episode, so we're going to move things right along here to this week's point of interest.
Well, howdy, partner. Welcome to the point of interest part of the POD cast. So grab your hat and hold on tight because we got some learning to do.
Whoa.
Incredible. Well, there it is. Whipped us right back into shape. So we're going to go and talk about Travis, 2 weekends ago now that you went to ISS Long Beach? Yeah, a week and a half ago. You were in California enjoying much better weather than anything that is happening outside my window right now. So tell us a little bit about Long Beach, the biggest takeaway. We have some video that we'll play here, and you can kind of talk about what we're seeing, and we'll get to some pictures. But overall, man, how was the show?
Yeah, it was great. We enjoyed it. It was, I think, beneficial. Met Chris Kretz, who's longtime listener at the show. He came, got to shake his hand, and you got a video here. It was a big, it's a big convention center. Usually they have carpet. So this year they didn't have carpet. It was a little bit tough on the feet, on the knees and on the joints. But every time you come to a booth that had carpet, you'd kind of like ease over onto theirs. If you were standing in the aisle or whatever, you just kind of ease over to their booth so you could stand on something softer than the concrete. But big convention center. It was pretty full actually, which was somewhat surprising. It wasn't as big as it was 2 years ago when I went to Long Beach. They actually had a whole another section in the back that time, and they didn't have that this time. But the main area was still pretty full. I mean, there were some empty booths that people had, planned on coming, and who knows, it could have been COVID that kept them away or whatever. But as far as the biggest takeaway, honestly, I feel like the biggest takeaway is just the value of putting yourself in a room like that with so many experts and so many people that know so much about their specific thing that you just have it feels like you kind of have like the print world at your fingertips, if you will.
Sure.
And it's a great show. It's probably my favorite apparel decoration show of the year. So really excited about that.
Yeah. So we can see here, we have some pictures, Bella and Canvas's booth. with some very large display signage
very.
there, which makes sense. They're a California company, right? They're kind of
Yeah.
that's kind of their home turf.
I think so, yeah. And they had a DJ in their booth, and so it was very loud. And I'm glad they had those walls around them, because
Sure.
every time you'd go in, you'd have to be, so I'm looking for a 3,001, or whatever. But yeah, it was
funny.
cool.
That's
very,
funny.
very on brand for Bella. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. So what are we looking at here? Who is this?
So I just thought these
That's
are all
cool
hats.
display.
I just thought it was a really cool display. I actually looked at the hats and I'm not going to say their name unless you're watching. You can like see it on the video, but I wasn't super impressed with their hats or their quality or their pricing, to be honest. I loved their selection, but selection at a trade show is much different than selection in real life. And I need, 100 of this particular color. Oh, well, we don't have that one in stock, but well, I saw it at the trade show. But there were a lot of hat manufacturers, a lot of like kind of even budget hat manufacturers. If you know anything about the supply chain issues we had this last year, we've talked about it on the podcast. Hats were really difficult to get. So it was nice to be able to make some contacts and have kind of some backups to our backups, if you will. I personally wouldn't use this particular one. I took this before I walked over and kind of saw everything and talked to him. But I mean, that's a pretty damn cool display.
Agreed. Looks like we have some. What was this DTF, right? Is that what we're looking at here? Yeah.
So DTF came on this, we've talked about DTF on the show. This actually is a powderless DTF. And so if you know anything about DTF, you print the stuff backwards. So you print the color and then you print a white back on the ink or on the film. And then it goes into this, the machines anyway, it goes into this kind of powder thing that's getting on kind of the wet ink and stuff. And then you heat that powder up and it becomes the glue or, the adhesion for the transfer. Well, this one actually does a third pass. So it does the color, then it does the white, then it actually prints a liquid adhesion or a liquid glue through the print heads. So they don't have to have powder. So I don't know how, I kind of asked them, I was like, doesn't that like clog your heads up? And they're like, oh, well, it's all water-based. And if you flush it, you do this and that and the other thing, then it doesn't, affect it, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't say you're a liar, but, I don't know. So this is kind of the newest, latest, greatest thing in DTF, the powderless option. So it was kind of cool to see that. There was a couple places. It's Cobra Flex. If you want to check it out, that's the name of the manufacturer that's like making these. And then there were a couple distributors that were there selling the Cobra Flex machines. It was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Look here, you posted a picture of this, and I was like, a four-headed DTG printer. But you said that you weren't all that impressed with it. Tell me why, because at face value, this looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if for those of you who are listening, it literally has four platens. And then the print head is going all the way across all four, back and forth. And so one, it was kind of slow. Two, it was kind of like it was moving. You know what I mean? It felt like it was moving a little too much. And then three, I don't know if I don't know if you could, like if one is printing the wrong way or something, or you're like, oh crap, I messed this up, or I messed this file up. You're going to mess four shirts up, or whatever. There was just some things. And then I'm thinking, this is actually a Roland machine, and Roland's been in the game. They know what's up. Why did they do this? I just didn't understand kind of you can't you'd have to have 8 platens to like preload to where you could pull them off really quick and reload them, and I'm just like, this doesn't seem as time saving as they're perhaps purporting it to be. But I could be wrong. It was the cool thing about ISS is they kind of debut a lot of this a lot of these machines and a lot of these different
Right.
technologies, and you get to see them for the first time. And so this was the first show that they had actually introduced the Roland DTG machine, and you could kind of tell that it was their first try.
First,
At least
first
I
go at
felt
it.
like, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't talk to anybody. Maybe they could have convinced me otherwise, but just from kind of standing back and watching it, I was like, what is this? Because you go over to
Right.
Epson and you see and it was like
3070.
90 grand, for this
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, sure.
85, 90 grand. I'm like, man, I would rather, have two 3070s at 100
Right.
grand.
Yep.
Personally,
Yeah.
or three GTX Pros, at 100 grand or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
I just feel like you have redundancy. Like if this thing goes down, I don't know.
Yeah.
Those were just my initial thoughts on it.
Nice. And then you told me about this miraculous looking thing.
Yeah, this is super
yeah.
cool.
It's Firebird, correct? The
Yep.
pre-treater.
Yeah, Firebird does pre-treat, and we have been using Firebird for a while. In fact, I think you guys use Firebird as well.
Yep.
I think I told you about it, or
sure
encouraged
did.
you to try it out.
Yep.
Yeah. So they have come out with this booth actually is showing two different products. So they have the washer and dryer for pre-treating. So you can literally load 144 shirts in that thing, and there's a 5-gallon. You can't see it, but there's a 55-gallon drum of Firebird pre-treat behind it that goes into that washer and pre-treats every square inch of those garments in about 15 to 20 minutes. And then it flushes all of that pre-treat. And this is kind of a patented thing. It actually sucks all that pre-treat back into that 55-gallon drum so it can be reused on the next wash.
Yeah.
Take it out and then you put it in that dryer, and then you can store these things. They've tested for up to a year. So you could literally receive the goods, throw them in the dryer, and then just put them on the shelf and use them as you need to. So everything in your shop would be pre-treated all the time. And you wouldn't need another pre-treater. You wouldn't need that.
Right.
You just need to press to iron it out to get a nice flat surface before you print, and then you're good to go, which is really freaking cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think it'd be great. I mean, we've talked about this before, where if just one person, whoever's receiving inventory, 144 shirts is essentially like if you're ordering in case quantity, like with Next Level, that's like 2 cases of shirts.
Yeah,
So that you can just throw in there, wash them, and kind of set it and forget it. I mean, at the most, you maybe have to press them again before you print it just to flatten those fibers out, but it beats pre-treating each shirt individually. That's for sure. But
sure does.
How much was this setup here? That
hefty price tag. Yeah, they for a washer and 2 dryers, because they sell you 2 dryers because they say you'll need 2 because the washer goes so fast. It's 70 grand. So that's plus obviously you got to buy a 55-gallon drum of pre-treat and has special wiring from your electrician and all that. But the cool thing, so I mentioned this is 2 products. The outgrowth of this particular product, as they were testing all of these shirts and stuff, and they were like, we've got all of these pre-treated shirts, what are we going to do with them? So they created a company called Cheater Tees. Cheater spelled Cheeter, like cheetah, but cheater. And they're basically another brand of fully pre-treated shirts.
You can kind of see the banner there in the back.
I think it's CEE. I don't know. It might be A. I don't know. But yeah, so we actually got a couple of those to test, and I'm not sure if Tate's tested them or not, but they're on his list of to-dos. And then the last thing I'll say about this particular station was I had a really long talk with their director of technology. His name's Sean, and we may actually end up having him on the podcast at some point. He was interested in maybe coming on and just talking about
that's awesome,
pre-treating and their company. And I'm a big fan of Firebird, so I thought that'd be kind of fun to have him on the show. So we'll see if that works
absolutely
out.
And then just this real quick before we move on. I thought this was cool. It has really nothing to do with DTG, but for those listening, it's a really cool motorcycle that they had there. Cool. Whose booth was this? And kudos to them for having something cool to make people stop and look.
Yeah, I think actually this is the back side of that other booth that we were talking about with all of the Mamba the shrine to Kobe
Oh,
Bryant.
right.
So this is the
Was that?
backside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the front side there.
Mm-hmm. And you
Okay.
see the truss there, the motorcycle's on the other
Yes.
side of that truss. And so
Ah,
what we're looking at,
right.
yeah, back and forth. Yeah. And I can't remember the company they sell. I think they're a Mamaki dealer. So they do a lot of UV with Mamaki, kind of in direct
Okay.
competition to PDS, which is the conference I went to called Energize in Nashville.
Sure.
So they're a direct competitor with them. They sell other things, but they had the coolest booth of the show, I think. It was
Yeah.
just so freaking cool. You can see this motorcycle, and I don't even know why they had it, except for just to be like a head turner. And then if you go
Yep.
to the next thing, this is basically a shrine to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
They had all these hats, and they did these. They're printing on skateboards. They actually
Yeah.
use like a car decal to then,
Mm.
and then they basically apply it like you would a car decal
Right.
onto the bottom of a skateboard. But this whole picture, for those of you who are listening, is basically, it looks like Kobe Bryant's throne room. There's like pictures of the
Yeah.
Lakers up behind him, and then there's this
Yep.
huge, like massive throne seat, like leather that has the Mamba on it, and it was just really cool. I just had to take a picture of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm surprised. I mean, you could probably UV on skateboards if you had the right size of machine and all that kind of stuff. So that's also an interesting side note. But yeah, that's awesome, man. So this was Tate's first show, really. What did he think of it? Did he enjoy it? And then before we move on, just kind of touch on the importance of attending trade shows like this, aside from the obvious you get to get out of town for a little bit thing. But yeah, how was Tate's first experience at the trade show?
Yeah, I think it was really a positive experience for him. He was able to see all of these new technologies and all of these, just see how big the world of printing is. And this is just apparel printing. This is just a part of our business. And I think that was a positive thing for him. Since he's been back, he's been sending out tons of emails, talking to different people. A couple of the cool things that we were able to basically connect with our specific reps for some of our different companies, got some better pricing on some garments and like a lower ship threshold. So we get free shipping, at a lower threshold than we had before. And all of that just because we were there and we were able to finally get through all of the red tape. I had been calling this particular company for a while, trying to say, hey, can we get free shipping on a certain number? Oh, we don't do that. It turns out they do. You just need to be able to talk to the right person. And so being in these situations where you sometimes, you can get to the right person because they're probably there. The ISS trade show is a big deal in the industry. Yeah. And so the guy I met from Mamaki, he's the president of sales in North America, was there, and I hung out with him in Nashville. And so I was like, oh, hey, his name's Joe. And he's introducing me to all the Mamaki people there. And so Mamaki doesn't actually sell to me, but they know I own Mamakis, and they know kind of who the best dealers are and can, kind of part the waters if I need something. And they're just good relationships to have if something, you're just beating your head against the wall, trying to figure something out with a machine or a vendor or whatever. Having these business cards in your Rolodex, so to speak, is really good for your business, or can be really good for your business in a pinch. So yeah, it was really good for Tate to be able to make some of those connections, and he's still making them. He's still sending emails. So that was cool.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I was bummed to not make this particular one, but there's more. I'm sure there'll be more trade shows and adventures for us to delve into in 2022 for sure. Yeah, man, I'm glad you guys had a great time. So with that, we are going to go straight into this week's main event. right. That was beautiful. And for those that are watching on video, you got a special treat. We're taking bumpers to the next level. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so this week's main event, man, kind of all things pricing, how to price your print-on-demand goods, increasing prices, and all of this came to be because of an announcement that Gear Bubble is increasing their pricing across the board on all products to the tune of $2.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's $2 is pretty steep.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it and you're like, oh, $2, and then you realize, oh, well, that was a $5 product and $2.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
it's everything. It's all of their products. So, obviously your margins take massive hits, and it's all different kinds of hits, because the $5 product to $7 versus the, $10 product to $12, that's not as big of a hit on your margins. So depending on what you were selling, man, it could really, really hurt.
Yeah. And the way they kind of, like you said, unilaterally rolled out this price increase, and then it was effective immediately. It wasn't like, hey, you guys have 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever, price increase is coming, do accordingly what you want with that information. And then we'll get you there. But no, it was just boom, it's happening. And if people aren't paying close enough attention, they could be wondering why all of a sudden they're not making enough money or the same amount of money when they finally get around to it and realize, oh, it's because they took it upon themselves to charge me $2 more effective immediately. But this brings us to a point that we've talked a lot about, Travis, and it's the importance of having your stuff on a spreadsheet.
That is very, very true. Because if all of a sudden your supplier decides to just raise their prices, what are you going to do? Unless you have an option, and the only way you can have an option is if you have your data in a way that you can quickly pivot. I wish we had that in a bumper. That would be good. That's on our to-do list.
It is.
But yeah,
StreamYard needs to add a soundboard, and I need to figure out who to contact to make that happen. But okay, anyway.
Yeah. So being able to pivot into to using a different vendor or something like that. I mean, that is a very important thing. I mean, we're not. I don't want to make it sound like we're like upset with Gear Bubble or taking it out on them. I mean, there are very real costs associated with this business, and those costs have gone up.
Yes, significantly. I think you were even talking about, I was over at your shop last week, and I had seen a piece of sublimatable metal or aluminum. Yeah, aluminum. And you were telling me, and you can tell the listeners, the increase on that particular item just by itself is kind of a good indicator of what is happening industry wide when it comes to costs.
Yeah, we had a product, and it's basically an aluminum panel that you sublimate on. So it's like art, and then a little piece of like a block that can attach to it, and all that goes in a package and sent to the customer. And I think our cost was the price we were charging to fulfill this for our customers, it was like $21, $22. And then they would charge, 40, 50, 60, whatever they decided to charge. And so they had a nice margin on that. And we were doing okay. We weren't breaking the bank on it, but, everything that we had, we were making anywhere from, $5, $6, $7, $8, depending on what it was. And so when we were reordering, I saw an email come across. So Tate usually does the ordering, but a lot of times I'll get the receipt, and I said, "Oh my gosh, that seems very expensive for, 10 panels was like $200 and some dollars." And I'm like, "Okay, well that's $20 some per panel."
Yeah.
And that's not including the little block that you hang the thing with.
Sure.
And we're charging 21? What?
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me, okay, we're losing money every time we sell one of these. Luckily, we weren't selling a bunch. And that's why it kind of crept up on us. But I had to immediately inform our customer that, hey, this has to go up to $28, and do you want us to buy these to continue to sell, for you? And he was like, yeah, my margin can handle it. But I had to do it right then. So I can sympathize with Gear Bubble, raising their prices. And I just think that I didn't like, and I don't think their customers are going to like, or don't like, depending on where they are, hey, I mean, they have been telling people that they're going to raise their prices for a while, but they gave them no, like, $2 is a lot, hey, we're going to go 10% across the board. Okay. I mean, they could kind of expect that, but, in some cases, it was a lot more than 10%. Let's just put it like that, 25, 30% in some cases,
Yeah.
And that kind of changes the game. So the way they did it, as far as like not announcing it and giving people time to adjust their prices on their different marketplaces, I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would much like when we do that. I mean, obviously the metal wall art was kind of a one-off, and I only had one customer selling it. So I was able to just contact them and see if they wanted me to pull it or if they wanted to pay the price. Right. So I gave them the opportunity, but for the most part, if I'm going to change my prices, I'm going to give, a couple weeks before we pull that rug out from under people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also goes to making sure you have an efficient way to contact your clients as well if you're fulfilling. So like, an email, MailChimp or Constant Contact or whatever that looks like, to have the ability to execute that in mass and just send an email and say, hey, this is happening on these products. If you sell these products, adjust your prices accordingly, or, take your product down or whatever that looks like. So, but all of this kind of spurred a conversation into something that you, Travis, have been kind of in the thick of the last month or so, and that's kind of deep diving into your cost of goods, or COGS, as we will refer to it for the rest of the episode. So if you're tuning in for some reason at 31 minutes and 20 seconds and you don't know what COGS is, just press the rewind button 15 seconds and we'll tell you that it's cost of goods, or you could have listened this entire time. So cost of goods, stuff like, I guess as an overview, overhead expenses, operational expenses, departmental expenses. So we're going to deep dive into each of those, starting with overhead expenses. So what are some stuff that you need to keep in mind, Travis, when you are looking at overhead expenses? And let me just say also, if you are producing items yourself in-house or fulfilling for people, this conversation is beneficial to you in an obvious way of encouraging you to check your prices. If you are outsourcing to somebody, this conversation can hopefully give you an insight into the reasons behind price increases when they happen, other than just the typical it's inflation, whatever, reason that seems to be, it's very real, but it's very vague. And so sometimes it can come across as, what does that even mean? Inflation. So this is why we're going to try and kind of deep dive into some of these topics to help give you a better understanding, if you are outsourcing or fulfillment, as to why these things happen. So overhead expenses, Travis, what are some things to look at or keep in mind when you are considering overhead expenses?
Yeah. So, overhead expenses are going to be like do you rent a space? Do you have a lease on a building, or on, an office or something like that? There's a lot of people that are doing executive offices or shared workspace. Do you have that monthly cost? That's going to be overhead. Utilities for that space, if you have those. If you're working out of your home, utilities could be your internet, maybe your cell phone. You could those are going to be fixed costs that are required to make your business work. For us, so what we're trying to do is we're trying to build like a tool or a spreadsheet that we can kind of plug numbers into and then spit out a cost of good. And so for us, we're taking in the overhead part, we're taking the executive salaries. What are all the people that aren't necessarily doing the production, but are required, again, to make all of this stuff work. What are those hard costs that are going to come in. Doesn't matter if you sell 10 things, doesn't matter if you sell 10,000, those costs are going to remain the same. Now, if you sell 10,000, maybe your lease needs to go up. Maybe you need more space. Maybe, maybe you need to hire some more executives. So those do change, but
but they tend to be congruent to sales volume, I guess, if that makes sense. So they can change, but usually if those need to change, it's a good thing, especially if it's an increase, because that means you're selling more items and it's growing pains, basically.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so you take those overhead expenses, let's see if there's anything else I can see I'm literally looking at our spreadsheet here on my other monitor. Like virtual assistants, same type of thing. They're not necessarily, you're not going to use their salary in your actual, the next one in the operational expense valuation, because they're not going into actually producing the product. So you would maybe take those as an overhead expense, because again, required to do everything you do, and you're going to pay them whether or not you sell 10 or 10,000. Again, I said phone, internet. Do you have insurance that you're paying? All of those fixed costs, that you're going to pay every single month, regardless, would go into your overhead expenses.
Absolutely. So the next category would be operational expenses, and that comes down to what it takes to make a product, right? So you're looking at labor cost. How long does it take to make one? I'll never forget. There was a time when Madeline and I would binge watch The Prophet, Marcus Lemonis, right? I love that show. I love what he does, how he stresses know your numbers. So he went into a pizza place once that was, hemorrhaging money, like they all are, all the businesses. He never, all the businesses on the show are, a day away from closing doors and boarding up the windows. And so he goes into this pizza place and he asks the cost of a single slice of pizza. And the guy tells him the retail cost, right? We charge, probably it's like $4.50 a slice or whatever. And he's like, no. How much is a slice of pizza to make? Oh, maybe $2 maybe. And Marcus Lemonis was like, listen to me. You need to know the cost of a single pepperoni. And how many pepperonis are you putting on that pizza? Because that's going to add to the cost. So he's like, I need to know the olive costs, my guy. Each olive costs what? So he was like super granular. But all that to say, the importance of knowing those numbers goes into your labor costs. How long does it take to make a t-shirt? And what does that actually mean? The amount of pre-treat, the amount of ink, the time it takes to do that for the production tech to get that done. And then once that is created, you're putting it in a poly bag or a box. So those costs money. The bubble wrap that you are putting that mug in with it, that costs money. The styrofoam, that costs money. The packing tape, that costs money. The labels, that costs money. The shipping cost, all of that stuff is what you have to factor in when you are thinking of the labor costs, not just, it's $2 for a blank shirt. Okay. That's part of it. But that you build, that's the crust of the pizza, and then you put the cheese on it and the roni. So, anything else when you're thinking labor costs, operational expenses?
Yeah. So, you might be asking, well, how the heck do you figure out, the cost to make one when you have to make 100 that day? And so what we're doing, and what we're in the process of, basically all of our techs they have a piece of paper, and we've asked them to each say in the morning when they get their, kind of here's your orders, here's your packing slips, here's your labels, here's everything you need to do your stuff, your prints, whatever, your everything. They have everything they need. Now, decide how many you're going to do. You're going to do 10. And this is going to be your test. And you're going to do this every single day for, we're going to maybe do up to 30 days worth of this.
Right.
And you're going to take 10 today. Tomorrow you'll do 20, then you'll do 5, then you'll do 30 or whatever. And you're doing little tests, and you're going to take those and start from, you're going to write down your time and then start to finish. How long does it take to make those, package those, put the labels on them so they are ready to go? And then we take all of those little data points and then we say, okay, our sublimation department takes about this long, on average, to make one product. And because we're going to divide it by all of the products they make, because sometimes they're doing a water bottle, which takes less press or less time on the press than maybe a coffee mug versus a camping mug or whatever all these different things are. We're just going to kind of bring them all in. We could get way more granular and decide how long does it take to do a coffee mug versus how long does it take to do a water bottle. But we're just going to do one category or one department at a time. So it'll be the same thing. We'll do the same thing with our DTG, with our vinyl, with our embroidery, with our UV, with our laser, all of it. Every single one will have multiple data points that we can pull in and find out what is the average this department takes to make one. So then we can add it with all those other pieces to the operational expenses that you're talking about. I mean, labor is probably our number one expense, because people got to make money and you need people to do the things. And so that's in most businesses, usually, your payroll is one of your most expensive things. So I need to bake that in to my cost. I can't just, like you said, well, it's a $2 t-shirt, so I need to multiply that. No, I need to know how much labor goes into that t-shirt, how much ink, how much pre-treat, how much, all of those things that are operational expenses that are dependent on the product, not overhead, not, if I don't get any orders, my operational costs are zero because, well, I'd have to fire everybody. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's a variable cost as opposed to a fixed cost.
Sure. Yeah. Those costs are going to be moving, and probably, once a quarter reassess, hey, are we still, the price increases happen. Is it a price increase that we need to pass on? Is it something we can absorb? Because I mean, you also don't want to raise prices every quarter or lower prices or raise it again and lower it again, because then your clients are just gonna be like, dude, I don't know what the hell is happening, but I don't know. I can't really ride this storm out. So, so talk about also like departmental expenses, and how those factor into the final cost of goods.
Yeah, I mean, it's really kind of like, so you have your overhead expenses, you have your operational expenses, and then for us, we're taking it into departmental expenses because we have 6 different departments. And really what that is, it's going to be broken down by each individual product. So it's going to take, it costs this much for a white coffee mug. Well, it costs this much for a 16-ounce beer stein. It's way more. And so we're taking those operational expenses, the labor cost, because we're going to get one number for how much does it cost to make a product in sub. And then we're going to take that number and apply it to our departmental expenses where we break it out by product. So each product has its own line. And maybe one of the lines is, actually, I'll just look. One of the lines is the labor it takes for that deal or for that particular department. And then the next one is, 11-ounce coffee mug, 15-ounce coffee mug, 11-ounce, blah, 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 blah. And then is there a specific machine maintenance or something specific to that machine? And then obviously shipping materials are going to be different per product. It's not like, it's one cost to ship everything. It's, those are going to have to be averaged out because it takes more to package a coffee mug than it does a t-shirt. Right. And so that's how we break it down. So really departmental expenses it's really for us. And it's a way we can take the overhead and the operational and then break it down even further to where we're not using too many averages. And we can get a little more granular, a little more specific to know our true costs.
Right. And then, like you said, you're having that spreadsheet, having the where your prices are based on. So you can plug in if the supplier changes its price, then you can plug that in, or if the pre-treat goes up, or if so on and so forth. So it's a living, breathing document that is able to change and spit out like, okay, so this is how much you need to charge for a Bella in Canvas 3001 now. This is what you need to charge for a white coffee mug now. So if you're listening again, you're probably asking, how can I use this information? And so, I mean, one of the main questions would be, right, like, what are your overhead expenses? Travis, you kind of covered that when we were talking about overhead expenses, but are you working from home? Are you leasing a space? Do you have shared office space, or are you using
costs.
your internet? Yeah, your internet costs, your cell phone, all that kind of stuff that you need to take into consideration. Operational expenses, Travis, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, do you have subscriptions to different programs? Are you Adobe Creative Cloud, and so you're shelling out $30 to $50 or $60, whatever their blood money is, or are you using other subscriptions based stuff that like an E-Rank or Merchant Words or Merchant Former, these different products? Those would all kind of go into your overhead expenses, because again, they're fixed costs that you're going to pay no matter what. So you have overhead. You do. In any business, you have overhead. And if you think you don't, well, you're not valuing your time much, because you are an executive staff.
Exactly.
You might also be production staff, but part of your time is fixed on the business, and you're an executive at that point.
So let's say, Travis, let's say I'm someone that's outsourcing my production. I'm not doing anything in-house. Operational expenses, what would that look like for me if I said, hey, I don't really have any labor costs? What does operational expenses look like in my scenario?
Yeah, I think you're going to basically, since we had to be granular and break it down into departmental expenses, I just don't think you need to do that. You could kind of bring that back up a level and say my operational expenses are my product costs, so because that's what it takes to operate with every single order that comes in. There is a cost of goods. That's a basic cost of goods. And so for Gear Bubble members, it just went up $2 per product, so you factor all that in. You also obviously put all of your shipping into that. And then let me just see if I can, can't think right off the top of my head if there's really much more to it than that on operational expenses, because again, those are your variable costs, and they're going to be based by how many orders you have, whereas your overhead costs are going to be your fixed costs that come in no matter what, no matter how many orders you have.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. So anything else as we kind of wrap up this main event when it comes to cost of goods?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's very important to know this stuff, because, prices are increasing. That's just the world we live in now. Inflation is here, and it's at an unprecedented rate, at least in, for a lot of years. It's really going crazy. And so the cool thing about having some type of spreadsheet like this, and if you are working from your house and it's just you, it can be a very, very simple spreadsheet, with just each individual cost or each individual product price. And you can basically create something very simple that allows you to change those prices and then see how much your actual cost of good is. Then you can go a step further and you can take that per product price, and then you can extrapolate it. Well, how much, let's say I want to make $20,000 this year because it's my side hustle or whatever, and I don't need to make all that much. Well, how many things, how many coffee mugs and t-shirts do you need to sell to make 20,000? So it can be very helpful with your goals and your strategies for the year, and then you can say, okay, well, this year, based on this, man, I have to charge, $47 for a coffee mug because I want to make $50,000 this year, because I only have, 300 sales last year. And so based on that, obviously that's probably not going to work. So you can kind of play with those three numbers. Okay, well, what if I only made 10,000? And what if I sold 500 instead of 300? And you can kind of base your goals. Is it, do I need to sell more? Do I need to raise my prices? Do I, all of those things, you can kind of play with those numbers. Once you have the data in place, you can make really easy formulas in Excel. And if you don't know how to do it, I guarantee somebody that can help you with it, because Excel is a a lot of there's people that love spreadsheets. I am not one of them.
Yeah.
I can get by, but I do know, Uncle Mike, he loves spreadsheets. So yeah, just DM him, ask him to help you.
Yeah, we're encouraging you to solicit his services and tell the PODcast sent you. Tell him you're a niece or nephew of the PODcast and Uncle Mike, you need to help me. Awesome. Well, if you guys have any questions on this, again, you can always reach out to us. The best way to do that is, of course, the Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/print-on-demand-cast. If you have any questions about COGS, if you have any insight or anything that you think we might have missed, or a tip or a trick that you've figured out, or maybe you have an awesome spreadsheet system already figured out that you're willing to share with us,
that'd be nice.
To give us, to help facilitate everyone figuring out this formula of cost of goods, that is a place you can go to do that. Also, we are new to the Instagram.com/print-on-demand-cast. Last week when we launched our episode with Tammy Cringe, she tagged our personal Instagrams on a story, and I thought, I feel like we should probably have an Instagram just to post content. So there'll be some content there. The link to our podcast feed is there, and we'll have some photos of new episodes, information about that kind of stuff. And so you can find us there as well. And if you hate social media, you can email us, info@printondemandcast.com, and let us know if you have any questions, any concerns, general wonderings, or a suggestion for a dad joke. We will take all of it. And as always, wherever there are podcasts, the PODcast is there for you: Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Anchor. There's probably been 3 more that have come out in the last week where you can find your podcast content. But if you are listening on the Apple Podcast app specifically, please leave us a 5-star review. Again, that's a 5-star review. And let us know what you think of the show. You can also rate us on Spotify. There is a spot where you can go and give a star rating on the Spotify app. All of that, what it does, the reason we ask you guys week in and week out to do that is not just for our own ego. It's not just to satiate any of that, but what it does is it allows us information in the back catalog, in the archive of the Print on Demand cast, to be found by someone who also probably would benefit from what we've had on the show, the information, the knowledge, the experts that have come on and talked. It gets all the information in front of them and just helps someone else along that journey. So that's really why we ask you guys to leave reviews. We just like to pretend that it's for our own egos, but it is nice. It is nice when you get that 5-star review. It does feel good. It is some validation. So Travis, anything else before we wrap this thing up?
Nope. Appreciate y'all.
All righty. Well, then for Travis, I'm Josiah, and we'll see you next time right here on the Print on Demand cast.
See ya.
Hey babe, thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.